Millionaire marries a poor girl. In a contract marriage, never thought she'd be his destiny. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Rain streaked across the tall windows of a penthouse office, the city lights below blurred like watercolors. Inside, silence pressed heavy between two people sitting opposite one another. On one side, Ethan Carter, 32 years old, a self-made millionaire whose name dominated the business pages. On the other, a young woman with trembling hands wrapped around the strap of her worn purse. Her name was Lily Hayes. Ethan did not waste time. His voice was calm, almost clinical, as he slid a sleek folder across the polished mahogany desk. A contract. A diamond ring lay on top of it, glinting cold under the chandelier. "Marry me," Ethan said. "Think of it as a deal." Lily's breath caught. For a second she thought she had misheard. Her heart pounded as she stared at the papers filled with clauses and signatures. The word marriage blazed across the top like a cruel joke. "Excuse me?" Her voice cracked. Ethan leaned back, his expression unreadable. "I need a wife for appearances. Temporary. Nothing more. You will be compensated. Your debts will vanish. All I require is your cooperation." The room seemed to tilt around her. Just hours ago, she had been huddled in a dim apartment where the landlord had pounded on the door demanding rent. The medical bills for her mother stacked higher each week. She had no savings left, no safety net, only desperation clawing at her chest. And now, here was a man who lived in glass towers and breathed rarefied air, asking her to sell herself into a marriage she did not believe in. Lily shook her head slowly, eyes wide. "Why me? You do not even know me." For the first time, Ethan's gaze softened, though only slightly. "Exactly. I need someone with no ties to my world. Someone who will not manipulate or scheme. You are desperate enough to consider it, and honest enough not to exploit it." The words stung. Honest, but desperate. He had her cornered, and he knew it. She looked down at her shoes, damp and scuffed from the rain, so different from the gleaming floor beneath her. She thought of her mother lying pale in the hospital bed, of the eviction notice taped to her apartment door, of the cold she felt every night pressing in from the cracked windows. Her hands clenched into fists. "You are asking me to marry without love, without trust, just a business arrangement." Ethan's voice lowered, firm but not unkind. "Yes, that is exactly what I am asking." The thunder outside cracked like a warning. Lily's pulse raced, torn between pride and survival. She could walk out and face the collapse waiting outside these doors. Or she could sign and step into a world she did not belong to, bound by rules and rings instead of feelings. She glanced again at the contract. Black ink on white paper. A lifeline disguised as a chain. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "I need time." "Oh." Ethan nodded once, as if he had expected it. "Do not take too long. The offer will not stand forever." The ring glittered between them, a symbol of power and promise. The rain pounded harder on the glass, echoing the storm inside Lily's chest. This was not a proposal of love, it was a transaction. But it might also be the only chance she had to save everything she cared about. And somewhere deep down, though she could not admit it yet, destiny was already shifting. The rain had not stopped when Lily left the glass tower that night. The neon reflections of the city rippled across the wet streets as she walked, clutching her purse to her chest as if it could shield her from the storm. Her shoes were soaked through. Her thin coat no match for the wind that cut down the avenue. Every step echoed the same question in her mind. Was that man serious? By the time she reached her neighborhood, the skyscrapers had given way to cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights. The air smelled faintly of damp concrete and fried food from a corner deli. Her building stood at the end of the block, its paint peeling, its stairwell dim. She climbed slowly, each creak of the steps heavy with dread. Inside their one-bedroom apartment, the space was silent except for the faint hum of an old refrigerator. On the table lay a pile of envelopes, some torn open, some still sealed, all marked with the same red word: overdue. Her mother's medical bills were stacked the highest, their corners curled from being read too many times. "Lily?" A weak voice came from the bedroom. Her mother pushed herself up against the pillows, her skin pale, her hair thin from months of treatment. "You are drenched, sweetheart. Were you working late?" Lily forced a smile, slipping out of her coat. "Just a long shift, Mom. Do not worry." She placed a cup of tea on the nightstand, hoping her mother would not notice the tremble in her hands. But her mother's eyes moved to the stack of bills. "The rent is due. How much longer can we—" Lily cut her off gently. "I will handle it. Please, just rest." Later, when her mother finally fell asleep, Lily sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the faded eviction notice pinned to the wall. Her chest tightened. She remembered the landlord's words from that morning. "If you cannot pay by the end of the week, you need to move out. I have other tenants waiting." She pressed her palms against her face, fighting the sting of tears. The waitress job barely covered food, let alone rent and hospital fees. She had applied for extra shifts, begged for advances, even sold her sketches at the weekend market for a few dollars each. Nothing was enough. The memory of Ethan Carter's office returned in a rush: the contract, the diamond ring, his calm voice offering salvation wrapped in steel. "Your debts will vanish. All I require is your cooperation." It felt like a trap, yet at the same time, like the only lifeline left. Her best friend Maya called that night, her voice crackling through the cheap phone speaker. "Lily, you sound awful. Did the interview work out?" Lily hesitated, then whispered, "It was not an interview. It was something else. He offered me marriage. Not real marriage, a contract." There was silence on the line, then an incredulous laugh. "You are kidding. Who would even suggest that?" "A millionaire," Lily said softly. "Ethan Carter." Maya gasped. "The Ethan Carter? The tech investor on the magazine covers? Lily, that is insane." "I know," Lily whispered. "But he said he would pay the debts. He said he would cover the hospital bills." "Lily," Maya's tone softened, "please be careful. You cannot sell your heart just to survive." But as Lily hung up, the weight of reality pressed down again. Her mother's frail breathing filled the silence, and the stack of bills glared from the table like a ticking clock. Pride could not pay rent. Dignity could not buy medicine. She opened her sketchbook, the one place she still allowed herself to dream. Pages of charcoal drawings spilled out street scenes, portraits of strangers, her mother smiling before the illness. She touched one with her fingertips, whispering to herself, "I just want a chance to live, to create, to breathe without fear." Outside, thunder rumbled across the city. Inside, Lily closed the sketchbook and pressed it against her chest. For the first time, she admitted the thought she had been pushing away all night. Maybe signing Ethan Carter's contract was not just a bargain with desperation. Maybe it was the only way left to protect the person she loved most. And though the idea chilled her, somewhere in her heart she knew the decision would change her life forever. Morning light streamed weakly through the torn curtains, painting the small apartment in shades of gray. Lily had not slept. The contract still hovered in her mind, every clause echoing louder than the rain that had finally stopped outside. When the knock came at the door, she startled, fearing it was the landlord again. It was not. A courier in a crisp suit stood with an envelope in hand. "Delivery for Miss Hayes. Sign here." Her hand shook as she scribbled her name. Inside the envelope lay the contract from Ethan Carter's office, neatly folded, his signature already etched at the bottom. The sight of it made her throat dry. That afternoon, she took the bus across town. Each stop rattled her nerves further. She clutched the contract like it was a live wire, her thoughts warring between shame and relief. By the time she reached the steel and glass building of Carter Enterprises, her resolve had been worn thin. Ethan was waiting in his office, composed as ever, a fountain pen resting on the desk. He gestured to the chair opposite. "I assume you have considered the terms." "Oh." Lily sat down slowly. "Yes, but before I sign, I need to know why the secrecy? Why me, when you could choose anyone?" Ethan studied her for a long moment, his eyes cool but not unkind. "Because you are not from this world. You have no agenda, no interest in climbing a social ladder. That is exactly what I need. A partner in name only, Someone who will not complicate the arrangement. She frowned. So this is only about appearances? Yes, he said simply. Appearances hold power. Investors, shareholders, partners they trust, stability. A wife represents stability. Without it, cracks appear in the empire I have built. With you, those cracks stay hidden. Lily's chest tightened. Every word reminded her this was not about love, not about her as a person, but about her role in his world of polished facades. Yet the image of her mother in the hospital bed returned, frail and fading. Pride could not save her mother. This contract could. Her hand hovered over the pen. I want some conditions too. Ethan's brows lifted, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. Go on. No interference in my personal time, no control over what I choose to do outside the appearances you require. And no pretending beyond what is written. I cannot be someone I am not. He leaned back, regarding her with a trace of respect. Fair enough. Add it. We will initial it together. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy and decisive. Then Lily pressed the pen to paper. Her signature bloomed across the line, shaky but permanent. Ethan slid the ring box toward her. Inside, the diamond gleamed like ice. Wear it. From today, you are my wife on paper. The weight of the ring settled cold on her finger. It did not feel like belonging. It felt like a lock clicking shut. That evening, back at the apartment, her mother noticed the ring immediately. Lily, what is this? Lily hesitated, then forced a smile. It is a promise, Mom. Things are going to be better now. Her mother's eyes glistened, misunderstanding completely, but her smile was genuine. For a moment, Lily let the lie stand. In his penthouse that same night, Ethan poured himself a glass of scotch, gazing out at the city skyline. He had secured the deal, yet his thoughts wandered back to the look in Lily's eyes as she signed her name. Not greed, not ambition, something else. Desperation mixed with defiance. It unsettled him more than he cared to admit. And though neither of them realized it yet, the moment her pen touched paper was the moment the boundaries of their contract began to blur. The week moved faster than Lily expected. One moment she was pouring coffee in a chipped mug for her mother. The next, she was being fitted into dresses that cost more than her entire year's rent. Ethan's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire, oversaw every detail. Stand straighter, shoulders back. Smile, but not too wide, Claire instructed as Lily wobbled in a pair of stiletto heels. I am trying, Lily muttered, clutching the arm of a chair for balance. The shoes pinched, the fabric of the gown brushed strange against her skin, and every mirror in the penthouse seemed to mock her. Ethan walked in mid-lesson, his tie loosened from a long day. His gaze lingered for a beat longer than usual before he masked it with indifference. How is she doing? Claire pursed her lips. She will pass, but barely. If she cannot handle a gala, she will be torn apart by the press. Lily's cheeks flushed. I never asked for this. Ethan's tone was cool. You signed the contract. You wanted your debts cleared. This is part of the cost. Her temper flared, but she bit it back. She thought of her mother's tired smile and the bills disappearing one by one. Survival first, pride later. The following days blurred into a montage of lessons. She learned how to hold a champagne flute without looking awkward, how to walk beside Ethan without falling behind, how to memorize the names of his most powerful investors. Still, she made mistakes, spilling mineral water on a silk tablecloth, forgetting the difference between caviar and roe, tripping over the long hem of her dress during rehearsal. Each time, Ethan's mouth curved almost imperceptibly, as though he was amused despite himself. Once, after she stumbled for the third time in a row, he caught her wrist before she could fall. Their eyes met, and for a moment the air tightened. You are hopeless in heels, he murmured. She pulled her hand back. And you are heartless in words. But her heart was beating far too fast for her own comfort. Finally, the night of the first gala arrived. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, strings of violins filling the air. Every guest was dressed in perfection, dripping diamonds and power. Lily clung to Ethan's arm, her nerves sharp as glass. You will be fine, Ethan said under his breath as cameras flashed. Just stay beside me. The first challenge came quickly. A senior shareholder eyed her up and down with a sneer. So this is the wife you kept hidden? She looks provincial. Lily froze, heat rushing to her face. Ethan's jaw tightened, but before he could reply, she stepped forward. I may not know much about champagne vintages or designer labels, she said clearly, her voice trembling but steady enough to carry. But I know what it means to stand beside someone through storms. Perhaps that is worth more than appearances. For a heartbeat, silence hung. Then, to her shock, a few nearby guests actually nodded, murmuring agreement. The shareholder's smirk faltered, and he turned away. Ethan looked down at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. She had not only defended herself, she had defended him. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversation and polite laughter. Lily managed small victories, remembering names, answering questions with sincerity, even coaxing a smile from an elderly partner who had been scowling all night. When the gala finally ended, she slipped off her heels the moment they were back in the limousine, sighing in relief. Ethan watched her quietly before saying, "You handled yourself well tonight." Lily laughed softly. "I thought I would faint." "You did not, and that matters." For once, his tone was not clipped or cold. It almost sounded human. The city lights flickered across his face as the car sped through the night, and Lily realized with a jolt that beneath the steel exterior, there was a man carrying his own burdens. And perhaps, against her will, she was beginning to care. The limousine slid to a halt in front of Ethan's penthouse, its headlights cutting across the quiet street. Lily followed him inside, still clutching her heels in one hand, her feet aching from hours of standing in borrowed elegance. The penthouse was silent, glass walls opening onto the city skyline. For once, the view did not dazzle her. She felt drained, every nerve stretched thin from the scrutiny of strangers. Ethan loosened his tie and poured himself a glass of water. "You surprised me tonight," he said simply. Lily raised an eyebrow. "Because I did not collapse under the weight of your world?" "Because you faced them," he replied, setting the glass down. "Most people would have shrunk. You did not." Her chest warmed despite herself. She crossed the room and sank into the sofa, curling her toes against the soft carpet. "I did not do it for you. I did it because I refuse to be humiliated in front of people who think money is the measure of worth." "Oh." He studied her in silence, his gaze unreadable. Then he said, almost to himself, "Maybe I misjudged you." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the hum of the city far below. Lily looked down at her hands, at the ring that gleamed coldly on her finger. This was supposed to be a contract, nothing more. Yet the air between them had shifted, fragile but undeniable. Days turned into weeks. The rhythm of the arrangement took shape. Public appearances filled their schedule: luncheons, charity dinners, investor meetings. Each time Lily dressed the part, smiled when expected, and stumbled less with every event. She still felt like an imposter, but little by little, she found ways to hold her own. Ethan remained distant, yet she caught glimpses of something softer when he thought no one was looking. The late nights when he worked in silence, the way his hand lingered for half a second when he guided her through a crowded room, the shadow that crossed his face when conversations turned to family. One evening, after a particularly long meeting, they returned home to find the penthouse cloaked in quiet. Lily walked onto the balcony, the city spread beneath her like a constellation. Ethan joined her, standing close enough that she could feel the heat of his presence against the cool night air. "Why did you really choose me?" she asked suddenly. "Out of all the women you could have, why the girl with nothing?" He leaned against the railing, his eyes fixed on the skyline. "Because nothing terrifies me more than being alone. And everyone else I meet wants the power, the name, the wealth. You looked at me and saw none of it. That made me wonder if, for once, I could trust someone." The words hung in the air, heavier than the city lights. Lily's heart thudded. She had expected arrogance, not confession. Slowly, she reached out, her fingers brushing his hand where it rested on the railing. He did not pull away. For the first time, the contract between them felt less like a cage and more like a fragile bridge. But bridges could burn. The following week brought whispers in the press. A rival business magnate, a woman with sharp eyes and a history with Ethan, appeared in photographs smiling too closely at his side. Headlines flared. "Is Carter's marriage a sham?" Mystery bride or business deal? Lily felt the sting like a blade. She had signed up for scrutiny, but not for ridicule. At a charity banquet that Friday, she overheard two women at the bar whispering, "She is just a placeholder. Everyone knows he will never love her." End of chapter. Why now? End of section 26. Her throat tightened. She wanted to disappear, but Ethan appeared beside her, placing a steady hand at her back. His voice was low, meant only for her. "Do not let them see you bleed." She lifted her chin, swallowing the hurt. Together, they walked back into the ballroom, side by side. That night, alone in her room, Lily pressed her sketchbook against her chest, fighting back tears. She had entered this contract to save her mother, to survive. She had not expected her heart to betray her, to start craving something real from a man who might never offer it. And yet, in the shadows of the penthouse, Ethan sat awake by the window, a glass of scotch untouched in his hand, staring out at the city with the same unspoken thought. When did the contract begin to feel like something more? The storm broke on the night of the winter charity gala. Snow swirled outside the grand ballroom, catching the light of chandeliers through frosted windows. Inside, the air was thick with perfume, clinking glasses, and murmurs of the city's most powerful. Lily stood at Ethan's side in a silver gown, every step practiced, every smile carefully placed. Yet her pulse would not settle. Cameras flashed as the master of ceremonies called Ethan Carter to the stage. "Our guest of honor tonight, the man whose investments have changed this city." Applause thundered. Ethan's face was composed as he shook hands, but Lily felt the subtle tension in his arm beneath her touch. She followed him toward the dais, but just as they reached the stairs, a voice sliced through the crowd. "Tell us, Mr. Carter," a reporter shouted. "Is it true your marriage is nothing more than a contract?" The room stilled. Lily's heart plummeted. Murmurs spread like wildfire, faces turning, eyes narrowing. Someone laughed cruelly. The name of Ethan's former partner, Vanessa Hale, drifted through the whispers. She was the one who had been photographed at his side, the one who had everything to gain from his downfall. Ethan's jaw tightened, but before he could answer, the master of ceremonies hurried him forward. "We will continue later, thank you." Lily followed, her smile frozen, but inside she burned with humiliation. At the edge of the ballroom, away from the lights, she finally whispered, "You knew this would happen, did you not? That someone would try to expose us?" Ethan's gaze met hers, sharp as glass. "It does not matter what they say. What matters is that we hold steady." "But it is true," she said, her voice breaking. "It is a contract. I am standing here as your wife, but it is not real, and they know it. Do you know how that feels? To be paraded like a shield?" He flinched, as though her words struck deeper than the gossip ever could. "Lily?" "No," she cut him off, her eyes wet. "I agreed to this for my mother, not for the world to laugh at me. I thought I could handle it, but I cannot." She turned, the shimmering gown swishing around her legs as she fled the ballroom. The cold hit her face as she burst through the side doors into the snow. Her breath came in ragged gasps, white clouds vanishing in the night. For the first time since signing the contract, she let herself cry. Back inside, Ethan stood rooted in place, her absence like a wound. He wanted to chase her, to explain, to promise, but pride and fear chained him. He had built an empire on control. Yet with her, control was slipping. Later, Lily returned to the penthouse alone, long before Ethan arrived. She stripped off the gown, leaving it in a heap on the floor, and curled up on the bed clutching her sketchbook. Her pencil moved furiously, sketching jagged lines, storm clouds, a figure alone beneath them. She pressed the page flat, whispering through tears. "I should never have signed. I should never have believed." When Ethan finally came home, the city lights still blazing behind him, he paused at her closed door. His hand hovered over the knob, but he did not enter. Instead, he retreated to the balcony, snow melting on the glass as he stared into the dark. For the first time in years, he wondered if all his power meant anything at all, when the one person who mattered most could not bear to stay beside him. The silence of the penthouse was louder than the storm outside. Both of them lay awake in different rooms, divided not by walls, but by the truth they were too afraid to face that the contract was no longer enough, and that love, unspoken and fragile, was the only thing that could save them. The morning after the gala broke with a gray, bitter light. Lily packed a small suitcase in silence, her hands moving mechanically as if her heart had already left the penthouse. The gown from the night before still lay crumpled in the corner, a symbol of the lie she had lived under glittering chandeliers. She paused only once, her fingers brushing the ring on her hand. The diamond sparkled mockingly in the pale sunday. Slowly, she pulled it off and placed it on the nightstand. When Ethan entered, still in his shirt from the night before, he froze at the sight of the suitcase. "What are you doing?" Her voice was quiet but steady. "Leaving. I cannot do this anymore, Ethan. I cannot be your contract wife, a puppet for the cameras. Every time I step into a room, they see through me. And the worst part is, they are right." He stepped forward, anger flickering in his eyes. "So you would walk away? After everything?" "I already gave up my pride," Lily whispered. "But I will not give up my dignity. You promised this would protect me, but instead, it has broken me." The words cut deep. Ethan's fists clenched, but he said nothing as she brushed past him with the suitcase. The door closed softly, but the silence that followed was deafening. Days turned into weeks. Lily returned to her old neighborhood, renting a modest room above a laundromat. She worked double shifts at a diner, her hair tied back, her uniform smelling of coffee and grease. The bills were still heavy, but at least the weight was hers alone. Yet every night, when the noise of the city faded, she opened her sketchbook. The drawings had changed less of street corners and customers, more of a man standing in shadows, his face etched with loneliness. She hated herself for it, but she could not stop. Meanwhile, Ethan buried himself in work. The office lights burned late, his meetings relentless, his demeanor colder than ever. But when he returned to the penthouse, the emptiness echoed louder than any applause. The ring sat untouched on the nightstand, a reminder of the woman who had walked away not for money, but for her soul. Rumors swirled in the press, whispers of annulment and betrayal. Investors questioned him, old rivals circled. And through it all, Ethan found himself staring at the door each night, half expecting Lily to walk back in. She never did. The contract had been broken, not with legal papers, but with silence, distance, and the truth Lily had spoken in that snow-chilled night. Without love, there was nothing worth saving. And Ethan Carter, a man who had once believed he could buy loyalty with ink and diamonds, was left to face the one thing he had always feared most, being alone at the top. Winter melted into spring, but the chill between them did not thaw. Ethan Carter moved through boardrooms and interviews like a machine, his voice clipped, his eyes harder than steel. Yet behind the polished mask, his empire was cracking. Shareholders whispered, reporters circled, and every headline carried the same word: sham. At last, the confrontation came, in the very place Ethan had sought to control his own boardroom. The long mahogany table stretched before him, lined with men and women who had built their fortunes beside his. At the head sat Vanessa Hale, her smile sharp as glass. "Mr. Carter," she said sweetly, "the public no longer trusts you. This so-called marriage has damaged our brand. Step down, or the company falls with you." Murmurs filled the room. Ethan's jaw clenched. For years he had silenced competitors with results, but this time their weapon was not numbers. It was Lily. And then, as if fate itself intervened, the doors opened. Gasps rippled across the table. Lily stepped into the room, a simple dress brushing her knees, her hair tied back. No diamonds, no designer gown, just herself. Vanessa's smile faltered. "You should not be here." But Lily did not look at her. She looked only at Ethan, her eyes steady though her hands trembled at her sides. "If you want to know the truth, then hear it from me. Yes, our marriage began as a contract. I agreed because I was desperate, and he needed a wife for appearances. That is the truth." The board erupted with voices. Cameras flashed from the press standing just beyond the doors. Lily raised her voice over the chaos. "But here is another truth. Ethan Carter is not the man you think he is. He may be proud, and stubborn, and impossible, but he is also the man who paid for my mother's care without asking for thanks. He is the man who gave me dignity when I had none left. I stayed because of duty, but I left because I was afraid of believing that he could ever love me." Her words cut through the room like light through storm clouds. Ethan's chest tightened, every carefully built wall crumbling. He rose from his seat, his voice firm, carrying across the hall. Enough! Silence fell instantly. His eyes locked on Lily's. She is right. I built this company on contracts, on signatures, on deals. But for the first time in my life, a piece of paper is not enough. Lily Hayes, I do not care if this board dissolves around me. I do not care if the world laughs. The only truth that matters is this. I love you. Gasps erupted again, but Ethan did not falter. He walked across the room, pulled the contract from his briefcase, and ripped it in two before the eyes of shareholders and press alike. The sound echoed like thunder. He dropped the shredded papers onto the table. No more contracts, no more lies. Only this, my choice, and hers. Oh, the room fell silent, cameras still flashing, but all Ethan saw was Lily, her tears glistening as she whispered, "Then choose me, Ethan. Not as your contract, as your wife." And in that moment, with the world watching, he did. The scandal that had threatened to crush Ethan's empire faded within weeks. What remained in the public eye was not whispers of a sham marriage, but the image of a powerful man standing before the world, ripping apart a contract to declare love without conditions. Months later, spring sunlight poured into a quiet art gallery nestled in the heart of the city. The walls were lined with sketches, Lily's sketches. Street corners, portraits, storm clouds, and fragile dreams, each one alive on canvas. A plaque by the entrance read, "The Art of Lily Hayes, presented by the Carter Foundation." Guests moved through the gallery, admiring the work, but Lily stood in the center, overwhelmed, her hands pressed to her lips. She had never imagined her drawings would hang anywhere but her own sketchbook. Behind her, a familiar voice spoke softly. "You always said you wanted a chance. Now the world can see what I saw from the beginning." She turned. Ethan stood there in a dark suit, no boardroom mask, no icy distance. Just a man, his eyes steady, holding a small velvet box. Her breath caught as he knelt before her. Gasps filled the room, but in that moment, the world blurred away. "Lily Hayes," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "We began with ink on paper, a contract, but what grew between us was real. I do not want deals. I do not want appearances. I want forever. Will you marry me not for debts, not for appearances, but for love?" Tears blurred her vision. She had walked into his world as a desperate girl with nothing. Now, she stood as a woman who had fought, endured, and found the courage to believe again. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes, Ethan. This time, for real." Applause broke around them as he slipped the ring onto her finger. The diamond caught the light, but it was not the stone that mattered. It was the warmth of his hand, the certainty in his eyes. Weeks later, their wedding was nothing like the glittering galas of the past. No headlines, no paparazzi. Just a small ceremony in the garden of the gallery, surrounded by a handful of friends and her mother, who smiled brighter than she had in years. Ethan held Lily close as vows were spoken, and when he kissed her, the world did not see a contract, a scandal, or a business deal. They saw two people who had chosen each other against every odd. The man who once feared being alone at the top was no longer alone. And the woman who once believed she had nothing discovered she had always been someone's everything. Their story ended not with signatures or deals, but with a promise sealed in love. The best mistake they had ever made.